Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Up first this week for our 2 games is 2000's Pokémon trading card game, an oft-forgotten spin-off for Game Boy Color, featuring the CCG phenomenon and one of the best 8-bit game soundtracks you may have never heard.
Following that is Retro Studios' second outing into the island world of Nintendo's most famous gorilla, with a soundtrack that swings from tropical to hard metal, 2014's Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze.
You know, last week was a great episode with Journey and Portal 2, but I think we're going to have this one going for a run for its money with another excellent episode here, because these soundtracks are like sneaky greatest of all time level Nintendo soundtracks. I mean, you don't think of these like what are the best soundtracks that Nintendo's ever made. Because Smash Brothers, it's a huge collection of things, right? But you don't think of Pokemon trading card game. I mean, some people may think of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. That's an amazing soundtrack, but like honestly, it is much better than I think some people then even give it credit for. So, great soundtracks we're bringing to you this week.
I don't remember, I think it was Sims 3 when I was like, I'm going to do that. I remember you specifically saying, I was a little confused that you were bringing that to the show for the soundtrack. And I won't lie, I had the same sort of reaction when I was like, Pokemon trading card game? All right, it must be good. And having listened to some of the tracks on the Critical 5, yeah, it's I'm pretty excited to hear more about it.
Yeah, it should be really great. Joe, how are you doing? What are you playing?
I did, in fact, reinstall Portal and play it.
Hey, there you go.
I haven't gotten to Portal 2 yet, but that is also installed. But I did, burn through the first Portal in, an hour. It's still fun, but those energy balls, I forgot that they were there because they're not in Portal 2, and I'm glad they're not in Portal 2. But that's really it. I haven't played anything else. Again, I'm still working on cross-stitches for Christmas gifts, and by working on cross-stitches, I mean this entire time I've been working on 1 cross-stitch out of the 4 that I'm hoping to get done.
It's gonna be busy with all the Christmas stuff going on. I mean, yeah, I've got work trying to pack in so many things before the end of the year. That's a bit nuts, but put about a dozen or so more hours in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. 42 hours in now, I think. I have Lincolnshire and Sussex open to me at power level 160 to tackle, but I am leaving the country of England to tackle my next quest. Won't spoil that one. Also, decided to go to my first dream state land. Again, we'll keep spoilers mysterious on that, but then I discovered a really nasty bug. Almost caused a real bad problem. That'll be something they have to fix in subsequent updates. But, you know, that's kind of, I guess, par for the course right now is big open worlds needing updates.
Yeah, it's the unfortunate part of so many games moving to giant open worlds is, boy, those are hard to QA test.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk about some composer follow-up news. The composers we've talked about on this show, they're still doing great things. They're putting out great work. Let's talk about some of the game industry headlines that may mention them tangentially. We have to talk about the Game Awards. The Game Awards aired yesterday as of this recording. It's been a few days by the time you get this episode in your podcast services. And got to talk about how in the pre-show, Lin Inaizumi performed Last Surprise Scramble, which is the version of Last Surprise that will be in Persona 5 Strikers coming up, because remember, that's Persona 5 Scramble, the Phantom Strikers in Japan. But what a cool performance. So glad that they got to edit that together all the way from Japan and get to play that in the pre-show. But again, relegated to pre-show, as will be a bit of a theme. But yeah, really cool performance. That was really great to see.
Yeah, it was really good. Lin absolutely crushed it. It was so cool. Later in the show, we got confirmation of who the 8th DLC fighter for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is...
And remember, last episode we said, don't get your hopes up. It could be Crash, it could be Jonesy, it could be Sora, it could be a whole variety of characters.
But you know who none of us guessed? Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, okay.
That was it, like completely blindsided. 100% blindsided. Thrown for a huge loop. I cannot believe it. I'm very excited. He looks very cool. I can't wait for him to have the most terrifying range ever. Hopefully, this means One Winged Angel is coming to the game. Hopefully, this means maybe some remake music. That would be cool. But I know in my heart that it will be One Winged Angel and literally nothing else.
I mean, great to have Sephiroth in the game, sure. But for the collection of characters in Ultimate, it's been reported, it's been told that Cloud was the most difficult to get into the game, bringing back from Wii U DLC. Why would Nintendo tempt the Square Enix Final Fantasy VII waters yet again? It's baffling. I think that's why none of us considered it as a possibility.
I expected Gino or Neku Sakuraba before I would have expected Sephiroth. But hey, it's the most fanfic pick they could have gone with, and I'm super excited to play as him.
Yeah, and if Disney still owns Sora, and that's the distinction between that and Square Enix, maybe the hope isn't dead yet for a big possible Megaton bombshell that we'll keep our 1% fingers crossed for. But I take it you're not going to announce what you're doing yet for Smash Your Pieces yet on this show.
I believe we put it on our official spreadsheet that you can go check, but we're not going to say it. We'll talk about it more when we do our Banjo episode in 600 years when Banjo is finished.
Speaking of Final Fantasy VII Remake, it won Best Music/Score. But they relegated it to a quick announcement again in the pre-show. They talk about how they love game music and had a couple game music performances, but no mention of composer names, no clips of the soundtrack. It was just kind of nestled in like a 3-pack of awards quick announcements. That was the same as it kind of was last year. That's disappointing. Do better, please.
I think it was the first award given out. I think it was the very first one they brought up, and come on, man. You're really going to do that? And then later in the show, just be like, I know, we all love video game music. And it's like, really? Really? Come on. I saw a lot of composers, smaller time composers that I follow, being like, yeah, no, that sucks. Please stop doing that. Because, this is the second year in a row that they've done that. So, And finally, the winner of Game of the Year was The Last of Us Part 2, which of course features the soundtrack done by the talented Gustavo Santaolalla, who we have talked about before. And Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam even showed up to perform the song of his Future Days, which is featured in the game, and in the game covered by the actors behind Joel and Ellie.
Yeah, I'll put it this way. We told you last time that's what was going to happen.
Yeah, I said last week, straight up, I think personally my answer is Hades, but if I was a betting man, I'd say Last of Us is going to take the award, because it was obvious. It was the critical darling of the year. It was obvious.
They also set the record for winning 7 Game Awards in one night.
But I gotta get on a quick soapbox real quick. So, Last of Us deserved pretty much every award that it got. I might not be a fan of the game, but to say that it didn't deserve those awards, that would be disingenuous of me, and I'd be a stupid idiot to say that, because it's just blatantly not true. Game of the Year, yeah, I can see that. That makes total sense. If anything else had won that accessibility award, well, maybe not this far, but they deserve that accessibility award because they went so above and beyond on those accessibility features. It's nuts how many features that other games should include. That being said, one of the awards they won was Best Game Direction, which was generally explained as the studio that did the best job managing the team that was making the game. Something along those lines. It's a huge bummer to see that go to Naughty Dog when a month before the game came out, all of the news was just Naughty Dog's a hell crunch work environment that is a revolving door of talent that forces people out and burns them out super hard, and just a lot of people just aren't happy working there. And to see Naughty Dog get that award when Supergiant was in that category and recently just came out with a story about how they don't do crunch, and in fact they require their employees to take vacations every year. I don't know, it just feels really depressing as somebody that wants to be part of the industry, because to me and to quite a few other people, it just felt like we knew that the management at Naughty Dog did a bad job when it came to crunch and organization and communication. But then they were handed a trophy for it. And that just kind of sucks. And that's all I'll say on it. But it's just that one aspect. I don't know. I'm not a fan of that. I hope that makes sense.
It does, but I think it also comes down to how these awards are defined and who's voting on them and what they consider. On the Game Awards website, they note Best Game Direction as awarded for outstanding creative vision and innovation in game direction and design. I don't know if I'd necessarily lump in team management and all that necessarily into that. So I think maybe the panelists or the people who are voting on these awards look at the end product and maybe put the working conditions to the back of their mind. Should they? Probably not. But I could point to that and say, yeah, they're looking at what is a gorgeous, fun, well-designed game without thinking about the labor costs behind it.
And potentially, that's just a big problem in games in general, is that we have a bad habit of just sort of pushing all that labor abuse to the side because shiny game. And I've been part of this problem before. I'm not immune to that. I mean, come on. I bought Ghost of Tsushima, and apparently Sucker Punch suffers from the same thing. Apparently it's a major Sony problem. Sony, all the studios under the Sony umbrella apparently have huge issues with crunch. But, like, I still buy Sony games. I still bought Ghost of Tsushima. I still played and loved God of War, and I've heard horror stories from Santa Monica, so. Oh,
yeah, they had a terrible, nasty end of that. I mean, they documented that in a whole documentary at Santa Monica. That was just, that was tough. But, I mean, you're right. It is different when you see Supergiant as a pinnacle on the other side of the spectrum, essentially, to be like, this is how it should be done.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, lots to cover from the Game Awards, certainly, but like that was the big game news center. A lot of interesting announcements there. I mean, with, follow-up Best Smash announcement with Perfect Dark and Back 4 Blood, which might as well be Left 4 Dead 3 by Turtle Rock Studios. I mean,
man, I was not expecting to see a Perfect Dark game. That's a really cool pull.
Yeah, and I think that's been rumored by the initiative for so long, and it was neat to see it come through in the way they did. It was pretty neat, but
just feels nice that Microsoft is finally making use of all of those rare properties that they bought.
Slowly but surely. And then, I mean, I loved seeing a Mass Effect tease at the end, but I don't know, will we ever see the game Mass Effect will continue? I know, I'm teasing, but even still, like, again, way early to see that, but yep. Real happy to see Liara, that's for sure. And then to round out the composer follow-up news, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World Complete Edition, which we had on the episode a couple weeks ago, officially has its launch date on all major platforms, January 14th. So it didn't hit 2020, but January 14th is when it'll be available.
Close enough.
Might as well be the same, right? Well, let's get into talking about the first of our games this week. Let's talk about Pokémon Trading Card Game. As you mentioned, Joe, why would we talk about Pokémon Trading Card Game? Would you believe it has an amazing soundtrack that nobody, except those who played this game, remembers or thinks about from that 8-bit era? Pokémon Trading Card Game was released on December 18th, 1998 in Japan as Pokémon Card GB, or Pokémon Card GB for Game Boy, and they released it on Game Boy Color. Australia would get the game next as Pokemon Trading Card Game on April 7th, 2000. So almost a year and a half later. North America on April 10th, 2000. And then Europe, the end of that year, December 15th, 2000. Sorry, Europe and PAL region there. It was then re-released on Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console in Europe on July 10th, 2014, Australia the next day, July 11th, North America on November 13th, 2014, and Japan, Christmas Eve, December 24th, 2014. So how would you play this game today? If you do have a 3DS and you want to pay money to buy the game on Virtual Console, if you still use your 3DS, you could do that, but let's be honest, it's not difficult to come across Game Boy games in some way.
You know, just acquiring them from a source.
Yeah, so...
Allegedly.
There could be some way to play Pokemon Trading Card Game today. The game was developed by Hudson Soft and Creatures Inc., published by Nintendo. Curiously, Hudson Soft is not credited anywhere on the game's packaging, its cartridge, or the title screen, but the end credits do list them as the game's developer. What is Pokemon Trading Card Game? It's a simulation of playing the Pokemon Trading Card Game.
What?
Funnily enough. So you're at like a tabletop and you're essentially playing the card game how you would in person, but just digitally through a Game Boy Color. The game uses 226 different cards from the first 3 real-life card sets. That would be Base, Jungle, and Fossil. You essentially construct a deck out of those cards, and you travel to different elemental-themed clubs around this island in the game world to duel opponents, win booster packs from them so you can get more cards, build your deck further, and eventually duel the masters of each club. By defeating each of these club masters, you will then be able to take on the Grand Masters. What is the story of Pokemon Trading Card Game? The game introduces it to you as such. You name your player, which has to be a young boy, unfortunately. There's no gender choice there in this game, but the player is crazy about Pokemon and Pokemon card collecting. One day, the player heard a rumor. Quote, "The legendary Pokemon cards, the extremely rare and powerful cards held by Pokemon Trading Card Game's greatest players. The Grandmasters are searching for one to inherit the legend." End quote. Dreaming of inheriting the legendary Pokemon cards, the player visits the Pokemon card researcher, Dr. Mason. And off you go into this island where you travel around, you learn how to play the game, you build your deck, and you start dueling a lot. So, can you collect all 8 Master Medals, defeat the 4 Grand Masters, and win the legendary cards? Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Pokemon Trading Card Game?
I have never played it. I think I told you this after recording last week, but I never learned how to play the Pokemon TCG. I was one of those kids that had hundreds of Pokemon cards, but zero knowledge of how to play the game. But I do want to take issue with one part of this story. Alright, so in the regular Pokemon games, it makes sense that there just be researchers for Pokemon, because they're animals that live. A Pokemon card researcher? Are you kidding me? How do I get that job?
This is all that people do on this island. You don't understand.
So it's like Yu-Gi-Oh, where all of the economy is like propped up by duel monsters.
Oh yeah, at least for this island. If you can talk to someone, you can probably duel them. It's a bit crazy.
But yeah, I've never played this. I've never played the physical card game. So I'm going at all this fresh, baby.
All right, strap in. You got some learning to do. So yeah, then it makes sense that you wouldn't have bought a video game about Pokemon Trading Card Game. I collected the cards. I loved playing the card game. I even remember at a time, because we've mentioned on the show, Pokemania was a thing in the late 90s, early 2000s. Like, I don't think anything else will ever eclipse the madness of what the cultural frenzy that was Pokemon around the world.
It was everywhere
during this time. Oh, yeah. And so to the point where the trading card game, the collectible card game, the CCG, when bookstores have events on the weekends that are sponsored by Wizards of the Coast and the Pokemon Company of like, go battle people and you can collect gym badges here. Like, these were actual events for the card game. It was wild.
It's actually kind of funny that we're talking about the card game now when like 2 weeks ago, the Uri Geller stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Happened. For anybody that doesn't know, Uri Geller is like a psychic, a famous TV psychic.
A magician, I think.
Yeah, a magician. And he was famous for his trick where he bends a spoon. And it's largely believed that Kadabra is based on him. In fact, his Japanese name is pretty much literally his name.
Yeah, it's Yungerar. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he had big issue with that. He did not like that. And so Nintendo, he basically put a ban, and Nintendo agreed to not put Kadabra on cards anymore, and he lifted that ban like 2 days ago, or like 2 weeks ago.
Pretty recently, yeah, so that's kind of crazy. It's also nice to see how the trading card game has grown since then, when 120 HP was a big thing in the cards back then, and now it's like 250, and it's like, oh my god. The power creep is real, folks. No, but like, trading card game was big at the time. I'm sure for those that have stuck with it, it's still big, but there are just other things to occupy people's time now. But yeah, wow. For there to be a video game about the Pokemon trading card game, 12-year-old me was like, yep, sign me up. I want to play that. I want to take it on the go and duel my friends and all of that. So, Joe, before we get into the development history, I got to give you like the basic super fundamentals of the game. And for anyone listening out there who has never played the Pokemon trading card game, I'll try to explain it simply as such. In the Pokemon trading card game, there are 60 cards in a deck. The field has 1 lead battle spot and 5 bench spots for Pokemon on each side of the field. So when it's that lead battle spot, you're going to go against your opponent who has that lead battle spot. You also have on the side of each side of the field prizes, which are cards from your deck that you just take off the top and then you put on your opponent's side of the field. And these are rewards for when you defeat an opponent's Pokemon. Usually the standard number is 6 prizes that you put on each side of the field. So you have key types of cards. You have Pokemon, energy, and trainer cards. The Pokemon are divided into basic Pokemon and evolution Pokemon. And so the basics are like your initial forms or just Pokemon who don't evolve in general. These are the only kinds of Pokemon that you can play directly to the field, whether it's in that starting position or on your bench. And then you can swap them in and out as you do. But you can only start with basics and then eventually have to get the subsequent evolution types to evolve them up and make them stronger. Now, each Pokemon has up to 2 attack options, and these are powered by energy. Only 1 energy card can be attached per turn, and these come in 7 types: water, fire, grass, lightning, psychic, fighting, and double colorless, which act as like 2 normal energy, essentially. But of course, since then, it's grown on to more types, but like talking about foundations, at least when it comes to this game, 7 types. Trainer cards are a variety of effects. You can there's draw 2 cards, you can add 10 to your next attack, etc. It's just a variety of random effects. And you can play as many trainer cards as you like per turn. You win a duel in Pokemon trading card game when you have taken all of the prizes on your opponent's side of the field, or if your opponent has no more basic Pokemon left to play on the field. So a duel can be over very easily if you each have a basic Pokemon that you play at the start of the duel from your hand. And if you wipe out that one Pokemon and they don't put any Pokemon on their bench, you win. It can be over that easily. So for speedruns for this game, yeah, that's a key tactic. So that's generally how you play the Pokemon trading card game. Hopefully that was easy to follow enough. I apologize if it's not.
I mean, sort of. I'm not good at learning board games without like doing it, so don't take what I say for too much stock.
And it's easy, to go step by step. The game has a really good tutorial where they really walk you through each and every turn of a battle. So like it's nice to learn that way. So don't feel like you have to go into this game with a whole bunch of knowledge. But yeah, then there's whole sorts of things where there's weakness, there's resistance, there's special effects like with the sleep, poison, paralysis, all that. So there's more to it than that. So development of this game is mostly thanks to Tsunekazu Ishihara, who we've mentioned before in the past. He's the current president of the Pokemon Company today, but he was one of the founders of Creatures Inc. along with Satoru Iwata. He is considered the designer of the card game, and he's credited as one of this game's producers. He even has a cameo in the game as Mr. Ishihara. He has his own little house in the corner of the island with a whole bunch of information on how to play in it. There's another cameo in the game, and that's Tomoaki Imakuni, who goes by the stage name Imakuni with a question mark. And Imakuni is an eccentric Japanese musician. He's most well known for performing Pokemon Ieru Kana, which is essentially, you may know it as the Japanese poke rap. So he's a weird character. I had no idea who Imakuni was at 12 years old at the height of Pokemania, but looking back on it, it's like, okay, I can see why that would have made sense in a Japanese market. They would have definitely known who Imakuni was. There were 2 real-life cards that were absent from the Pokemon trading card game, Game Boy Color game. This would be Electrode from the base set and Ditto from the Fossil set. They were excluded because it was difficult to translate their odd effects to the game engine for the trading card game. For example, Electrode has the ability to sacrifice itself to turn itself into energy that can then attach itself to another Pokemon. And then, of course, Ditto can transform and copy itself into the other Pokemon. So these were replaced by cards that were game exclusive. They changed their properties, kind of took away those Pokemon powers, as it were. There are also new cards throughout the game, probably a handful or so. Of course, there's the legendary cards, being Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres, and Dragonite. They have the original ones that you may know in there, but they made special legendary versions. And then also a new real-life Meowth card was included with each copy of the game. It was a weird hollow Meowth card. Wasn't that good, but it was unique, and that was all collectors needed.
I would have liked to have a holographic Meowth card.
I may still have mine somewhere. I may not even have my collection. My brother may have the collection. I don't know. It's somewhere, I'm sure, in a big old binder. In September 1999, Nintendo of America announced that they would be releasing an English version in North America of Pokemon trading card game, except it was going to be with the proposed title of just Pokemon Card. Because, Pokemon Card GB was the title in Japan, right? But it was supposed to be released that winter, and it's speculated that it got pushed back to April for a focus to promote Pokemon Stadium on Nintendo 64. The game was not without controversy, though, as we mentioned, Pokemon was truly in the cultural zeitgeist at the time. The game was banned in Saudi Arabia because it supposedly promoted Zionism. According to Sheikh Abdul Aziz bin Abdullah, the Pokemon video game and cards have symbols that are, quote, the Star of David, which everyone knows is connected to international Zionism and is Israel's national emblem.
Oh my god.
If you look at the colorless energy symbol, that is actually not the Star of David, but congratulations, you tried to make a name for yourself.
This is just like in America we had the Pokemon are demons. They're the devil.
Yes, the Baptist church had quite an issue with the idea of evolution.
What a time.
That's a way of putting it for sure. Well, when the game came out, it was reviewed fairly well, with an 81.25% on Game Rankings. It was considered a faithful, fun, and amusing adaptation of the card game, but for reviewers at the time, it simply did not hold up to the fun of catching them all in the mainline games. It's pretty simple gameplay, but a big problem is that it's luck-based, especially when it comes to the coin flips in the game. Sometimes it feels like the coin flips are specifically against you. There's no scientific proof, I don't think, behind this, or maybe someone's done some research into like the algorithms of the game programming, but sometimes it feels like, yeah, the coin flips are really against you. This is a game that's recalled pretty fondly, though, for those especially that did play it. In a 2009 retrospective of Pokemon spin-offs, IGN retained their high praise for the game from their original 9 out of 10 review, stating, quote, "It was really kind of ridiculous how awesome this game turned out to be. If there was one spin-off we could ask Nintendo to reintroduce, it would be the trading card game."
I'm kind of shocked they didn't do that, to be perfectly honest, because it's still big. Not as big, but it's still big.
Right, and I think it's, there may be an app or like a website or something like that. So I think there's some ways of doing that, but certainly nothing with a story and going around and collecting medals and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Pokemon trading card game sold 607,193 copies in Japan by the end of 1999. It would go on to sell an additional 1.51 million copies during its first year in North America. There are unfortunately no awards to speak of, but the most interesting thing about Pokemon trading card game's legacy is that there's a Japanese-only sequel. It's called Pokemon Card GB2 Great Rocketodon Sanjo. And it was released March 28th, 2001 in Japan for Game Boy Color. Same developers, but it was actually published by the Pokemon Company instead of Nintendo. It included new enhancements, such as the ability to choose the gender of the player character, a training mode to help new players, a deck diagnosis to rate the effectiveness of a player's deck, and a new group of antagonists known as Team Great Rocket. The game features all of the cards from the original game, along with new cards from the fourth set of cards that got released in real life, the Team Rocket set. Apparently also as well as cards that were originally exclusive to Japanese vending machines and the Pokemon trading card game instructional video intro pack. So this brought the total number of cards in the game from 226 to 445. I don't think there was any real explanation why it never came westward, which is a shame, unfortunately. Probably at a time where Game Boy Color is a little out of date. But there are fan translations available if you ever want to give it a try. I haven't, but it's one of those ones where it's like, I really should. I have really fond memories of the original. The composer for Pokemon Trading Card Game and its amazing soundtrack is credited to Ichirō Shimakura. Ichirō Shimakura, born January 19th, 1972 in Ebetsu, Hokkaido, Japan. Not a lot of information on him, unfortunately. Just that he started at Hudson Soft in 1993, and when that company closed its doors, he moved on to ND Cube in 2012.
Wow, it's been that long since Hudson Soft closed. That feels so much more recent.
Right, yeah, it's kind of crazy. Or at least, he moved to ND Cube then. I'm not sure if that was when Hudson Soft... That kind of feels right, actually.
Yeah, it feels correct, but I can't say for sure.
Mm-hmm. So, he's known for composing this game and its sequel. He also composed music for Mario Party 3, 4, and Advance, because again, those were Hudson Soft games. He also did some music composition apparently for DDR Mario Mix, Tetris Party, and Wii Party U. But eventually he primarily became a sound director for the Mario Party series, with 7, 8, DS, Island Tour, 10, Star Rush, the Top 100, and Super Mario Party. Most recently, he is the chief sound director on Clubhouse Games' 51 Worldwide Classics.
Hey.
Which made me realize that, ND Cube is the developer for that game, and they moved right to that after Super Mario Party, which is why there isn't any DLC for Super Mario Party.
That would do it, yeah.
Got it. Mm-hmm. No interviews with him, no articles about development research for the soundtrack for Pokemon trading card game. A real shame, because it's a banger. Let's get into the 5 critical tracks for this soundtrack that I adore and really remember fondly, and I can't wait to show it to you all. Number 1 here on the Critical 5. This is Mason's Lab World Map. So yet another case of during this time, there was no official soundtrack released for this game. There's no sense of what official track titles are. People just kind of label what this was based on where it played in the game. So yes, this does play in 2 main places in the game. When you're at Mason's Lab in the beginning and learning about how to play the game. Also, when you go to the overworld of the world map, the song continues. And it even goes into when you go into each of these clubs, there's a lobby, there's a sort of waiting room essentially, and there's the main gym part of the club. I mean, the world map continues to play in the lobby and the waiting room. So this is a song you're going to hear a lot in this game. But it's probably also the biggest example of you either 100% know this theme or you absolutely do not. There's no middle ground of I think I've heard that. No, you've played Pokemon trading card game on Game Boy Color, and this song is buried in your memory, or this is your first time hearing it. And for the first time hearing it, I mean, yeah, wow, what a happy little stroll kind of piece. Life is so good in this world. Everyone just plays trading cards. I think you do gotta love the emulation of the percussion on this piece to really just give this piece rhythm. You're high stepping, your character is going through his walk cycles, no matter what. And it's a fun, happy piece that is iconic to this game.
And it also just feels very Pokemon. This feels like a town song I would have heard in Gold and Silver.
Yeah.
That's the vibe I get from it. Yeah, it's really good. I think Happy Little Stroll is the best way to describe it. I think you nailed it.
And I think that's a really good comparison to Gold and Silver, because several months later, that would be when Gold and Silver released in the West. So yeah, it's fair to compare these two on Game Boy Color, these kind of sort of sound chips and soundtracks there. It's really fair. Number 2 on the Critical 5, another piece that you'll hear a lot, but wow, it's so good. This is Normal Duel. So when you are battling everyone around the world to build your card collection, build your deck, you will hear this song so much. It's probably up there with the world map theme as these are the 2 pieces you're going to hear the most. And wow, it's a good thing it is so unbelievably catchy. But also, do give this one a full listen, because I'm really impressed how this piece really goes places. It starts with this intro, really gets the groove established, especially as the game tries to do a shuffle sound effect, which is also really neat. How the sound effects really sound on the Game Boy Color chip is really cool. But it goes from intro to a verse. They repeat the verse and add harmony to it. Then they go into a whole pre-chorus section. Then the chorus section swells, and that's kind of what you're hearing here in the clip. But overall, it's a 2-minute, 10-second loop. And that is crazy for this time.
Yeah, especially on a Game Boy Color. That's unheard of. And it might be specifically because if you're going to hear the song so much, boy howdy, there better be some variety in there.
Yeah, and it's so good. I feel like I like pointing to this one as like, this is like the standout of like, look, this is on Game Boy Color. Just think of like all the composition that's gone on here to have it sound this good, and you're going to be hearing it a lot. And boy, I could listen to this song on loop and never get sick of it. But then the stakes are raised. Number 3 on the Critical 5 here. This is Clubmaster Duel. So in the clip here, you kind of hear a semblance of it, but the way this piece opens is with this dun da 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 dun da 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 dun da 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 da, and it's like this drop D note here that really low, and it's just this drone of a bass repeating rhythm that lets you know like, oh, it's serious. You're taking on the master of the club, one of these 8 battles that you have to get to earn these medals. There's a lot of building setup and atmosphere, especially for a battle track, and then it really picks up the melody into the chorus, which is kind of the swell here that you hear in the clip. But honestly, wow, like that swell up is so great in gameplay to like get to that moment in particular. But even then, like the full minute that it takes to build up, like really highlights the tension of this battle. And like, they're important ones. Like you don't hear this one as often, but it's one going back to it that definitely fond memories of this one. So this is like the gym leader battle, essentially. Great battle track, but it lets you know that there are stakes here for sure.
I think it's something to do with the part you were talking about, the dun da 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 dun da 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 da. But whenever I hear that specific sort of rhythm, I'm like, oh, Victory Road. That's where my head goes. The rest of the song does not sound like it would play on a Victory Road, but that specific part does. So my brain does a bad thing and makes me associate it there.
If anything, the chorus kind of sounds more like you're making progress and you're making good moves against this difficult duelist. So yeah, there's something to be said there. Things get just crazy here for number 4 on the Critical 5. This is Ronald's theme. This plays during your duels with Ronald, and every Pokemon game, especially these early ones in the late 90s, early 2000s, you need a bratty rival. Someone who just, you hate their guts, but they make for the best rivals, and Ronald is that brat. You battle him every few medals, just kind of as you progress throughout the game. You face him at the end. It's the whole Gary Oak complex right there. But wow, this piece is bonkers. I mean, right from the beginning of the piece, not necessarily in the clip here, but just this this crazy rhythm that gets into the action right away. And the part I could not believe, I thought I had remembered it, but hearing it with fresh ears supposedly today, jazz riffing on these little synth notes on Game Boy Color, these crazy riffs. Like, when do you ever hear that in a Game Boy game?
I can't think of an example. Like, this is my favorite song on your Critical 5 here. This song is incredible for the Game Boy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Oh, man, it just has such a good groove to it. I love it.
Yeah, and I think it's another one where, like, go back and listen to it, because so many of these were so difficult to pick just 30 seconds, especially these dual pieces that had to be longer. Now, granted, they're not 2 minutes, 10 seconds, but they're more like a minute and a half. Like, they're still beefy. They've got parts to them. Just so many cool things going on with these dual pieces. And we're going to wrap up the Critical 5 with another dual piece. This is Grandmaster Duel. Okay, these duels are so difficult. Maybe that was just like to kids at the time, I don't know, but like they crank up the enemy AI quite a bit for these duels, so you're going to hear this one a lot, even if it's just 4 duels with essentially what are the Elite Four of this game. It's a high stakes, final boss-like piece. Again, the clip kind of shows the acceleration to a faster pace, but to think the start of the piece, just imagine if, unless you want to go listen to the full thing, which, wow, please do. But it starts more dramatic, and it has this kind of slow, deliberate rhythm and pace at the beginning. But as you hear in the clip, it ranks up. It just turns up that rhythm, and suddenly it's and oh my goodness, feels so good to listen to when you're actually in the heat of Game Boy card duels. Now, I don't know if anything will ever top the Lance Red champion theme from Pokemon Gold and Silver, but wow, I think this one comes close, and especially for a spin-off game that not everyone has necessarily played.
And honestly, that's the vibe that I got the hardest upon listening to it for the first time. Like, that's the song that immediately came to mind. So. Oh,
yeah. And if you listen to the beginning, it's that same vibe at the beginning of the piece overall, for sure. I do like a YouTube comment in particular that, especially when like people do orchestral covers of this piece, people compare it to like, this is like if Yoko Shimomura were doing a Pokemon battle, and especially if it were like in 8-bit. And I see you, I can kind of see where that sense comes from. It's like pretty simple melodies, but very catchy and just like kind of gets in your ear and stays there. As amazing as these duel themes are, and they are really iconic and emblematic to a game where you're just dueling all the time, let's talk about a couple other tracks on the cutting room floor. First, I have to mention Grass and Lightning Clubs. So I mentioned how these clubs that you visit on the map, they have those kind of 3 rooms. There's the entrance, there's this waiting room, and then the master's room, like the gym area of the club. Now, you're going to still hear the world map, as I said, on those first 2 rooms, but it's that gym room that gets these different themes. There are 3 club master room themes. One is like a calm, reflective chime. This is for the rock, water, and psychic clubs. One is a grungy, tough guy tune. That's for the fire, fighting, and science clubs. But this one has this smooth, swanky swing. And again, I can't think of that many pieces that try for a swing syncopated rhythm on a Game Boy.
For some reason, I know this whole episode has just been me like, this reminds me of this kind of song from Pokemon games, but like, I immediately think like, I'd like to hear this song when I'm using Surf.
Sure.
That'd be neat. But like, it doesn't actually fully sound like any of the Surf themes in any of the games. And also, this is another one that just makes me think like this feels like a town theme, like in a later game.
Absolutely. And it's easy to make those comparisons because Pokemon music is so entrenched in the industry, right? And there's been so many examples, but I feel like for a game to come out and then be a spin-off here and have such a great soundtrack that not many people remember, but those that do, the nostalgia is heavy. It's pretty intense. And then I also, on the cutting room floor, I have to give credit to, well, credits. This just feels like a credit piece. Like, it does so well encapsulating that happy celebration, your grand victory, congratulations for beating the game. I almost kind of get like Super Mario World ending credit vibes to this one. It's one I feel like, again, if more people played this game, this would be put up there as like, oh yeah, great credits theme, for sure.
I can sort of see the Super Mario World comparison, but again, I just hear a vibe similar to the Gold and Silver credits theme.
Yeah. I mean, again, another great credits piece there, but yeah, wow. I think there are only a handful of songs still left on the soundtrack for Pokemon trading card game. Honestly, they took up a lot of the space for these dual pieces, but even for the ones that I didn't miss and are on the cutting room floor of the cutting room floor, it's such an amazing game. To think on a Game Boy Color for all of these cards, all of this great music, that it's a Pokemon spinoff that, as your case number one, really, I mean, not everyone played. And so what will I never forget about this game? Yeah, I mean, rediscovering its fantastic soundtrack, knowing I had to bring it to the show, and was really excited to talk about it, but also just, little 12-year-old me, playing a version of the card game that I liked to play in real life with my first ever game system, a Game Boy Color, and what am I doing? Playing a CCG on it. Trading cards with friends, dueling them through that. Doing the card pop mechanic where you link up with a friend and you get a card that you couldn't really get in the main game. That was a thing for this game. It's apparently not on the 3DS Virtual Console version, which is unfortunate. But yeah, wow, a great little game with, as you've heard, an incredible soundtrack on Game Boy Color.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. I can't say I have much desire to go play it myself now. But yeah, no, I was not aware of any of this soundtrack, and it's you're right. It's really, really good.
I feel like I'm gonna go. We'll see if my battery in the Game Boy Color cartridge is still any good, or at least find means to play the game again.
This is your portal. We found it.
This is my portal to a great game. So to transition to our next game that we'll talk about, we cover a fan remix, whether it's on OC Remix, YouTube, wherever. And I feel like some of these pieces that we talk about, like, they're recent game tracks, so there isn't too much difference in how the cover sounds versus the original piece. I think this is a huge leap in quality between like the original and what is it like to play it on actual instruments. And so we go to the YouTube channel for Dr. Pez VGM, where he plays some instruments and then he brings in Insane in the Rain music to play sax and piano. He brings in Maximum Hamburgers to play drums. And this is their take on what they call normal battle, but it's the normal duel theme. And wow, the instrumentation is amazing, just shows the quality of the composition. We will be right back.
Alright, baby, our second game is a little more modern than that, 14 years older than the Game Boy game we just finished talking about. Nevertheless, still fantastic, because we are going to talk about Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. I don't know why I said nevertheless, as if like being an older game disqualifies it from being a good soundtrack. I was looking for a segue and I did a bad one. Look, sometimes they happen, sometimes they don't. Tropical Freeze was originally released on the Wii U on February 14th, 2014 in Japan, Valentine's Day. Perfect gift for a significant other, a gorilla. February 21st in North America and Europe, and then February 22nd in Australia. It would then later get a Switch release 4 years later in May of 2018. It was developed by Retro Studios, who we have not really talked about on this show. They are the studio previously responsible for the Metroid Prime series, which I'm actually kind of surprised that neither of us have brought Metroid Prime. Though I'm not qualified to talk about it yet. I will be hopefully within the next year or so, but that game is supposed to have like a legendarily good soundtrack.
I mean, yes, it is. Let's put it this way. It's one of those cases where same composer, Kenji Yamamoto. So it will be coming to the show in 2021.
Here's hoping. So it was published by Nintendo. Also, obviously, it's a Donkey Kong game. If you thought anybody else published it, you're nuts. So, Retro had actually revived the Donkey Kong Country series in 2010 with Donkey Kong Country Returns. Previously, the last game to hold the country name in the franchise had been Dixie's Double Trouble all the way back in 1996. Not to say that Donkey Kong as a franchise had just been completely dormant that whole time. There were titles like Donkey Kong 64 and Donkey Konga, Jungle Beat, Jungle Climber. They all released in that sort of window of time. But none of those games really had the critical reception that the original Rare trilogy of games had been met with. Like, those are considered three of the most iconic games on the Super Nintendo. And as much as I love Donkey Kong 64, it is not considered one of the more iconic games on that system. And there's good reason for that. And then, like, people generally, I've heard good things about Donkey Konga. I've heard okay things about Jungle Beat. I've never heard anybody talk about Jungle Climber or Barrel Blast, lest we forget that game happened. But yeah, even Returns, though, while very well received, had its problems, like the rolling being mapped to Wiimote waggle.
Yeah, definitely the big problem with that game on Wii.
Very bad idea, in my opinion, though, honestly, looking back on it, it's not that bad. But it's still kind of just annoying. It fixed that with the 3DS release, which is the only one I've beaten. I didn't beat the Wii version. It was too hard. I was not good enough at it.
Same.
So, outside of that, though, Tropical Freeze is widely considered to be one of the best games to ever be released for the Wii U. And that's saying something. The Wii U was a huge, massive failure, but boy, it had some good games that nobody played, and one of them was Tropical Freeze. Tropical Freeze, like the rest of the games in the Country series, it's a side-scrolling platformer. Player takes control of the titular Donkey Kong, and he can also be joined by a companion who rides on his back if you're playing in single player, or you can play it in co-op with a second player where they get to play as the companion. These companions are Diddy Kong, who was in Returns anyways, the most famous of the second player characters in the franchise, Dixie Kong, who had made a return into the Country series since 96, and for the first time ever in a DK platformer, Cranky Kong, who could do the Scrooge McDuck bounce on his cane. And we'll get to that. We'll get to Cranky Kong later, because boy howdy, that's one of my favorite stories.
Yeah.
So the Switch version also added the ability to play as Funky Kong, who has various advantages that make the game much easier when playing as him, such as the ability to hover, he can double jump, spikes won't kill him, he can breathe underwater indefinitely. This was advertised on the game box as the game including a new funky mode, which is a part of the box art that has since become a meme on the level of featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series.
Yes, absolutely.
It's so good. I absolutely love it. The story summary on Wikipedia is as follows. As the Kongs celebrate Donkey Kong's birthday, their island is attacked by the Snowmads, Arctic invaders. Their leader, Lord Frederick, blows a horn that creates frozen wind and an ice dragon. The Kongs are blown away, and the Snowmads seize the frozen DK Island. So, obviously, your mission is to make it back to DK Island and defeat the Snowmads. That's really all it comes down to. So the question is the Kong crew up to the task, and are you? And this is where I will ask, Peter, what are our experiences with Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze?
You're asking if I'm a bad enough Kong to take out the Snowmads? I beat this game with the help of my friend Scott. He's now over at Irrational Passions and Dual Shockers, so shout out to Scott there. Yeah, we played it, I think it was in the couple weeks that it came out. It's hard. It's really a difficult game, especially at the time when I was still really bad at 2D platformers, and he did some good legwork in carrying me, even though I was Dixie and had some of that hair hover jump a little bit, kind of helped a little bit, but the game is great. It really is one of the best Wii U games ever made, and that continues to the Switch. Great game, difficult game, but wow, the soundtrack.
Oh, yeah. I had a very similar experience. I played it in co-op with my friend Kyle, and I think we did it over the span of 2-3 weeks. We still sometimes talk about the pufferfish boss with a war flashback look in our eyes, because that's the one that took us the longest to beat by far.
Yeah.
But we did finish it. Oh, it's so good. It is really hard. You are correct. It is a hard game. I think it's a little bit easier than Returns, but not much. But yeah, it's a fantastic game. And I'm so glad it came out on Switch, because nobody played it on Wii U, because it was on the Wii U. So in terms of the story of development for Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, according to Retro Studios president Michael Kalbaugh, another DK game from Retro after Returns was not actually really the plan at first, but the team kind of felt like they, quote, had a lot of gas left in the tank after finishing it. And so they just sort of sat down and started working on another Donkey Kong game, and wanted to include a lot of concepts that they hadn't had time to put into Returns, such as a more dynamic camera that would give the world more depth, and just moving the camera around makes it so much more interesting to look at. And then levels that took place underwater, which I guess those weren't in Returns. I don't remember, but I can't remember any, but it was pointed out on the Wikipedia page. So I guess so. And the addition of Dixie with her hovering ability, because she is a very iconic part of the Donkey Kong Country series, and I can't believe she's still not in Smash. Another addition to the game was the ability to pluck certain objects out of the ground, and this was apparently directly inspired by Doki Doki Panic, or as we would know it here in the United States, Super Mario Bros. 2 USA. The producer, Kensuke Tanabe, apparently worked on that game, which is probably a big reason for why the idea came to them. I just found that's such a lineage. That dude is still at Nintendo. Wow.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, you think about ground pound to get items there, but yeah, I guess Returns didn't have the pluck.
Mm-hmm. There was apparently a lot of pressure on Retro to prove that they could make another DK game, because Shigeru Miyamoto was reportedly very protective of Donkey Kong. He considers it his baby, I think even more so than Mario. It was his first big creation in video games, and so he basically was like, you do it right. This is my baby. Do it right, or you don't do it at all. But when it came to development, he would give the team advice here and there, but he was pretty much entirely hands-off during the whole process, which is a very interesting parallel to how he was with the original Donkey Kong Country, where he would give advice every once in a while and design advice and stuff like that, but he didn't tell them what they had to do. He didn't treat them like they were a team, they were working under him. He just, checked in every once in a while. I find that very interesting, because I think when we were talking about Majora's Mask, or I might have been talking about Majora's Mask in Smasterpieces, where specifically he was so hands-off that the team got straight up like anxious about how hands-off he was being. So I imagine it might have been something like that. I don't know. Tropical Freeze was officially unveiled at E3 2013 as part of the Nintendo Direct. I gotta point this out. This was the same Direct in which Super Smash Bros. For 3DS and Wii U, Super Mario 3D World, and Mario Kart 8 were all announced as well.
Ooh, wow.
What a Direct. What a lineup. Oh, man. That's one of those where, like, I remember where I was when this happened.
And it was also a time where we thought Retro Studios was going to do something new besides Donkey Kong.
Yeah, this was like one of two periods where we had absolutely no idea what Retro was working on. And then it turns out they were making another Donkey Kong game. Big surprise. So, Tropical Freeze had originally been slated for a release in December of 2013. It was then pushed back to February of 2014 because they needed more time to sort of optimize the game. This was infamously announced at the VGX Awards. They kept advertising that Nintendo had an exciting announcement that night. The VGX Awards were what the Game Awards were before Jeff Keighley freed himself from the Spike overlords and started getting better. But this was back in the dark times. And so they were advertising, Nintendo has a really exciting announcement. Make sure you tune in. And that announcement turned out to be Reggie coming on screen and saying, you can play as Cranky Kong in Tropical Freeze. And I still remember even Jeff Keighley just sort of had this mode of like, oh.
Well, that's it?
You got anything else? And like...
Wasn't Reggie wearing like a Metroid shirt or a Metroid pin?
I think so. Like, yeah. It was this moment of like, oh, even Jeff didn't know what they were going to announce, and they threw him under the bus real hard. Ooh, jeez. And now I think Nintendo learned their lesson, because the only times they've really shown up at Game Awards anymore is when they have like a Smash character to show off.
And then there was Bayonetta the one time. Bayonetta on Switch, but yeah, no.
Like they don't come in with, you can play as the old man now. Just what a moment. One of my favorite Nintendo announcement fumbles ever. It's that and the Vitality sensor. Two legendary moments.
Ooh, yeah.
But for the most part, Tropical Freeze was given positive critical reception upon its release. Its Metacritic currently sits at an 83 on Wii U and an 86 on the Switch, because people actually played it on that second one. A lot of reviews praised the soundtrack because, as we've said, it's incredible. Presentation, which is amazing. Level design, great. Improvements from the previous title. They're no longer mapping anything to Wii Remote Waggle. Great improvement. But some critics threw some shade at it, calling its overall lackluster co-op gameplay. That one I will agree. It kind of sucks that player one gets to play as Donkey Kong and they don't get a choice in the matter, while the second player gets to pick from 3 characters. It's kind of a bummer.
Did they fix that in the Switch version? It feels like something that could have been switched.
I don't think so. I think you have player one as Donkey Kong, or they can play as Funky and not have a second player at all. And those are their choices. There was one review that called the level design, quote, clunky and repetitive, which I will hard disagree on that. And also some of them calling the boss fights frustratingly difficult and not fun, which I will again hard disagree on that.
I mean, it's tough when you have, very few hits that you can take, but the bosses aren't difficult in theory. It's a matter of, can you execute?
Yeah. Well, the like review was pointing out like they launch too many attacks at once and there's no way to see what's happening. And it's like, no they don't. I don't remember that being the experience at all.
Mm-mm.
Like, it's just, I hard disagree on both of those criticisms, but hey, to each their own. So within a week of being released on the Wii U, the game had sold 130,000 copies in the US, with 70,000 more copies being sold in Japan within the first month. And by December of 2019, it's estimated that the Wii U version had sold 2.01 million copies, largely due to its inclusion in the Nintendo Selects collection as of March 2016, which means it got a price drop. Unsurprisingly, the Switch version sold remarkably better, because people actually had Switches. Within the first 5 days of being released in Japan, it had outsold what the Wii U version had sold in a month, with a total of 88,421 units sold, followed by a reportedly 2.08 million copies worldwide by December of 2018. Which means it broke 2 million a full year before the Wii U version that had been out for 4 years had broken 2 million. That is dire, folks. As of December 2019, the Switch version has reportedly sold 2.65 million units. It's unknown whether or not Retro will be returning to the Donkey Kong franchise a third time. From 2014 on, it was largely a complete mystery what Retro was working on. In fact, I'm pretty sure we still don't know what Retro was working on. But then in early 2019, Nintendo announced that Metroid Prime 4, which was previously being developed at Bandai Namco, was being restarted and put back into the hands of Retro Studios. So that's what they're working on now. But who knows what they were working on before that.
I still like to believe it was Star Fox Grand Prix.
We heard too many rumors about it for it to not be real at the very least. Right. It was too much. I personally hope they do return to Donkey Kong after Prime 4 though, because I want to see them pull in the Kremlings. Now that K. Rool's in Smash, come on. I want to see them, what they do with K. Rool.
Oh yeah, that would be really cool.
I want that so bad. Anyways, I was able to find a good amount of stuff on my composer, which is good. He's not Japanese, so that probably helped. But I was worried because David Wise is the composer behind Tropical Freeze, and David Wise is a big name that has been a long time coming on this show. He apparently shares a name with an Olympic gold medalist and a TV and animation writer. But we're not talking about either of them. We are talking about the game composer specifically. But always funny when we find those composers who are like, oh, there's like this other notable figure in a different field with the exact same name. Cool, that'll make it fun to Google.
Right.
David Wise was born on September 13th, 1967 in Colville, United Kingdom. He started his musical education with the piano, and then he moved to trumpet, followed by learning how to play the drums. He began a career in game music largely due to a hell of a coincidence. At the time, he had been working in a music shop, where one day 2 people walked into the store to ask about a Yamaha CX-5 music computer. He demonstrated the machine to them using music that he had actually written and programmed into the machine himself. Those 2 people were Tim and Chris Stamper, the founders of Rare, which at the time was Ultimate Play the Game, and they immediately offered him a job. That's how he ended up at Rare.
Wow.
What a neat story. He apparently was not actually aware of how beloved his work on Donkey Kong Country was until a coworker at Rare had told him about OC Remix. At which point, that's when he realized, oh, people really liked the music I wrote back then. And he has also taken part on 2 big OC Remix unofficial remix albums. The first being Serious Monkey Business. He did a remix on that album where he also brought in Grant Kirkhope to do some of the guitar work and stuff. And he also worked on that big, huge Donkey Kong Country 3 remix album. So he has done work in the fan community as well. He continued working at Rare until November of 2009, when he resigned due to the studio's heavily changed culture that sort of happened as a result of their acquisition by Microsoft, which most people that were at the studio at the beginning also left for very similar reasons. He personally felt as if he no longer had the opportunity to create the music that he wanted to in the environment that the studio had sort of become. So I get that. In December of 2010, he founded a personal studio simply called the David Wise Sound Studio. He is currently a member of the record label Brave Wave Productions, which I believe we've mentioned in the past, because it is a label that also includes artists like Gyp Zell, Manami Matsumae, Yoko Shimomura, and more. Those are just the 3 we have mentioned on the show before. You can follow him on Twitter at David_Wise, and his personal website is located at davidwise.co.uk. As for his discography, he has worked on a lot of games. A lot of them. Most of those during his time at Rare, most of the most recognizable ones. His first project with the company was Slalom. He also did the music for Wizards and Warriors, RC Pro-Am, Marble Madness, which was not a Rare game, I'm pretty sure. Snake Rattle and Roll. I learned very recently that he did the music for A Nightmare on Elm Street, the NES game. That's not very good. But the music is pretty good, surprisingly. I played that in a special Halloween stream in October, so that's how I found out about that. Super RC Pro-Am, Battletoads and Double Dragon, Battletoads and Battle Maniacs, Battletoads Arcade, all 3 of the original Donkey Kong Country games, Diddy Kong Racing, Star Fox Adventures, It's Mr. Pants, which, yes, is just on this list because I love the name of that game.
Great name.
Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, Viva Pinata Pocket Paradise, of course, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Snake Pass, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. He is credited as doing additional vocal arranging for Call of Duty Black Ops 4, and a ton more that we'd be here all day if I listed every single one. These are just the ones I recognized the names of. David Wise has been in this industry for a while, and he has done a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of historical development research for the soundtrack itself, I was able to find an interview with David Wise specifically about Tropical Freeze. I'm very happy that I was able to find that. So, the soundtrack was, of course, primarily composed by Wise, but additional music was provided by Daisuke Matsuoka, Minako Hamano, Shinji Ushiroda, and Ryu Tamura. We have talked about one of them being Hamano. She was covered for her work on Link's Awakening, but we haven't talked about the other 2, or the other 3. Yeah, there's 3 of them. Also, Kenji Yamamoto served as a supervisor on the soundtrack. We talked about him back in episode 57 for Super Metroid. And he's also, as you were saying, he's the guy who did Metroid Prime, which is why we haven't talked about Metroid Prime yet. Wise actually ended up on the project because it turns out that Michael Kelbaugh, who I recently mentioned was the president of Retro Studios, he is a former Rare employee, which I did not know. And so he personally called Wise to ask him about working on Tropical Freeze. And according to Wise, Yamamoto had specifically instructed him to make sure the soundtrack didn't sound too familiar. Basically, he didn't want this soundtrack to just be Donkey Kong Country again. And this is largely credited to be the reason the soundtrack has so much variation to it, because boy, the soundtrack has a ton of variation to it, just out the wazoo. Apparently, many people that work at Nintendo happen to also be very good singers who are members of choirs in their spare time. So Yamamoto recruited them all to sing vocal parts for songs like Grassland Grove, and then any other vocal samples on the soundtrack were taken from a sample CD of African vocals. Tropical Freeze has a combination of original music and remixes of classic Donkey Kong Country music, much like Returns did. Wise's philosophy on when each type was appropriate was largely left up to how the project evolved, and also how much that particular track needed a redo if he was going in that direction. The quote when he was talking about it is, quote, "I tried several remixes for Aquatic Ambiance, but ultimately for that track, I think I got it right for the SNES, which is why I kept it close to the original in Tropical Freeze." So that makes sense. Sometimes you get it right the first time, and sometimes, it could use a little bit of improvement.
I remember it being a big deal when, in the pre-release hype for Tropical Freeze, that it's like, oh, and David Wise is coming back to do Donkey Kong Country.
Well, yeah, it was the first time he had touched the franchise since '96.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it was one thing where Returns had a pretty good soundtrack, but I think you'll get to hear the variety of, when we're talking about like, oh, there's a huge gamut of genres and things like that on this soundtrack. And it's Wise putting his years of experience behind it. And it's incredible.
Yeah, it's such a good soundtrack. Speaking of, let's jump into it and see how it sounds. Because I've run my mouth about it enough. We're going to start with critical check number 1, Tropical Freeze. This song is the main menu of the game. There's the tropical. I found it. Like some nice steel drums there. You got a ukulele in the background. You got that whining guitar, which every time I hear that whining guitar, I just think of that Game Grumps clip with Froggy.
Yes,
and his fishing for Froggy.
Oh, yeah, the best.
I'm going to sneak into your room tonight and sing this in your ear. That's all I can think of. But yeah, I really love how hard this song nails the island aesthetic. Because while Donkey Kong takes place on an island, all of the games take place on islands. I feel like the island part is never really one of the vibes the music pulls up. I've never gotten that feeling from like the original trilogy at the very least. There's pirate themes and stuff like that, but never anything that just feels like this, if that makes sense.
Well, and when you have better instruments and better recording methods, you can get a better sound of what the piece is trying to accomplish. And yeah, for the main theme of the game, essentially, you don't necessarily get the freeze part per se, but that'll come. But yeah, it's a great example of like, this is how life is on DK Island before the Snowmads arrive.
Yeah. Following that is critical check number 2, Mangrove Cove. Pretty sure this is the only song from Tropical Freeze in Smash, which is a crime, actually.
Yeah.
But this is the Donkey Kong vibe that we all know and love. It's this nice jazzy piece that also still has like the ukulele in the back and some of the steel drums, and it still has that tropical feel to it. But I mean, you've got that trumpet like just tearing it up.
Actually incredible.
It's so good. And you wouldn't think that jazzy and islandy vibes would like meld this well, but they do so hard. Just and there's one part, it's not in the clip, because the clip rightfully focuses on the trumpet, because yeah, it's so good. But there's also like a little subtle guitar solo at one point, and I really, really love that part. It's such a good song.
I think it shows the perfect transition from like, if you know of Wise's old work on Super Nintendo, this is like, all right, David, go all out. You have all these instruments and these performers at your disposal.
The limiters are off, David.
Right, like recreate that vibe for like opening levels here. Oh my gosh, so good.
That's really good. Like, I'm not angry that this song's in Smash. Thank God it's in Smash, but why is this the only one in Smash?
Yeah.
It's not even a remix either. It's just the original. Following that, we're going to go an entirely different vibe, not only from the previous 2 tracks, but from Donkey Kong in general, I feel like. Maybe some similarity to Donkey Kong Country 3 in some parts, but for the most part, critical track number 3 is Windmill Hills. this does not feel like Donkey Kong, but it's super good. Like banjo, violin, what are those doing in my jungle game? And how can I get them to stick around? It's just such a good song. Like, I'm a sucker for acoustic guitar, and this song makes perfect use of it. For some reason, the vibe I get is like, it feels like a big town area of an RPG. Like you walk into the big city, and this is the music that's playing. But I might be the only one that gets that vibe. This is actually the only track where I was actually able to find a quote from Wise talking about the specific song. He says, quote, "I was experimenting with some country-style chords on my guitar, and this forms the basis of the track. So it's live electric and acoustic guitar, along with a MIDI guitar, too."
When you're playing this game, you hear those first couple songs on the Critical 5, and it's like, this is a good soundtrack. This is really good. And it's this track where it's like, oh no, this is actually amazing. Like, it's an odd genre, as you said, for Donkey Kong Country, but the positive energy is so infectious, and it's like I'm playing a game with a special soundtrack for sure.
It's really weird that country vibes don't fit Donkey Kong, considering the word is in the title.
Yeah.
I just realized that. So, we're going to get into my two favorite songs on the entire soundtrack, the first of which is critical track number 4. It's Irate 8, Chase. This song is an arrangement of Lockjaw's Saga from Donkey Kong Country 2, which happens to be my favorite song in Donkey Kong Country 2, because it's awesome. This is probably my favorite version of Lockjaw's Saga that there has ever been. It's super hectic, it's really overwhelming, it's got this powerful, frantic energy to it. There's a more low-key, but like tense version that plays in the first half of this level, when you're only getting hints that there is an angry giant octopus that is going to come after you. And then once the octopus does start coming after you, it turns into this. And this is like easily my second favorite song in the game. It is so good.
I am pretty partial to the tension version that you mentioned, but yeah, there is something special when it's like the chaos of the level and the music just works so perfectly together. It's just like, run, get away from that big octopus. I mean, yeah, what a great cover of his own work, and just really taking it to the next level. Fits perfectly.
That's another one where it's like, man, we got to figure out what we're doing with repeat composers, because I want to talk about Donkey Kong Country 2. That game is such a good soundtrack. And then finally, let's get to what, in my opinion, is the best song on the soundtrack, like bar none. Critical track number 5 is Punch Bowl. This song plays during the boss battle against Bashmaster the Unbreakable. He's a big polar bear dude, and he's pretty cool. All the bosses in this game are great, except for the pufferfish, who can kiss my butt. This is the best song in the game. I don't care who you are, this song rips. This song rips so hard, it's so good. Most of the boss themes go really hard into metal, which I think is another testament to how much range David Wise has. Because metal is also another genre that Donkey Kong hasn't really touched all that much. It's so good, I'm actually angry that this song is not in Smash. I'm so upset. To be perfectly honest, this song is the main reason why I wanted to bring this game to the show.
I'm right there with you, buddy. This is, the best song on the soundtrack. On an amazing soundtrack. Again, let's stress. But picking the clip was so impossible. I feel like I love the drop moment and the da bum bum ba da. So like that key change in the piece is like such a cool moment in the piece, I think. But I mean, it still goes places in like riffing on guitar solos as the driving drums and rhythm behind it. It suits the battle perfectly. And it's the standout for sure. Maybe not everyone agrees with us, but I am 100% lockstep with you there.
Oh, it's so good. So, for tracks on the cutting room floor, Peter, you got a couple? Hit me.
I have a couple, and it was so hard to narrow it down to two. Because it's not that, like, Joe, I can't believe you missed these. It's like, no, it's so difficult.
It's just such a good soundtrack.
Right? But the two that I would have probably put on if I were making the list, I would have put Homecoming Hijinks. Which that's always a fun word to see in the title. Hijinks with the I, J, and I all next to each other. This is essentially the theme of the Snowmads. So whether it's like the beginning kind of cutscenes where the ship and the freeze are rolling in, like this is kind of the theme that represents that. And I think it also plays in a level later in the game, which is a cool little musical callback. But to represent the villains, even in pre-release materials, like this is a pretty important piece, I think, to represent the antagonists. And it's so cool. Like the orchestration and the instrumentation is great. Like these gongs at the beginning that have like a chilly quality to them. It's such a great piece. It's not big energy Donkey Kong Country, but there's a bit of a sinister nature to it. And I love it.
It feels very Viking, which is fitting.
Yeah.
The Snowmads are Vikings.
100%. And all the weird Arctic animals to go along with it. The other one for me on the cutting room floor is Current Capers. And it's that aquatic ambiance cover that David Wise mentioned there. He does keep it pretty close to how the original sounded, but again, it's doing great things with updated instruments and such a cool atmosphere for like when you're actually underwater and how it sounds. And then like even there's variations like when you're underwater and then you're jumping out of the water and like there's some EQ changes there. It's just such a great chill piece, and I love listening to it and relaxing.
I mean, you can never go wrong with aquatic ambiance ever. It's a classic piece. It's so good. For me, my first song on the cutting room floor is Canopy Chaos. More country style stuff. Jaw harp? Jaw harp. It's here. The jaw harp has arrived. This song's just nice to listen to. I don't really have much more to say about that, but just another example of like, Wise has some really good range when it comes to the type of music that he's good at, and this game just shows it off so well.
Question, because I honestly don't know. What's the difference between a jaw harp and a harmonica?
Well, the harmonica is the melody that you're hearing.
Okay, good.
But the jaw harp is the...
Got it.
That's a jaw harp. It doesn't sound anything like you'd think an instrument called a jaw harp is. But yeah, it's the sort of rhythmic. You hear it a lot in like westerns and stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
And my other song on the cutting room floor is Big Top Bop. This song plays during the fight against the boss, Pompey the Presumptuous, who I believe is a seal, right?
I think so. He's the first boss.
Yeah. This appears to be the internet's favorite boss theme, and they're wrong, but I will give it a very close second place, and I do think it earned a spot on the cutting room floor at the very least. I still think Punch Bowl is better in every single way, but that is not to say that this song isn't awesome. It rips. And I want to hear Wise do more metal stuff in the future.
I mean, yeah, Wise with more metal stuff would be great. It kind of makes you think with the Battletoads soundtrack from this past year of how David Housden kind of interpreted David Wise's old Battletoads song. It's like it works perfectly well, right? But yeah, Big Top Bop, you're right. The internet does love it. And I totally agree with you that, yeah, maybe second for the boss themes. Still a great piece, though. Everything is quality on this soundtrack.
It's a good soundtrack. It took us way too long to get to it. I apologize, Mr. Wise.
We got to it in the first 100 episodes. We're good.
That's true. It came in right at the wire, baby. So, what will I never forget about Tropical Freeze? Like I said, I played it in co-op with my friend Kyle. We still talk about that pufferfish boss. It took us so many tries, and apparently it's what stopped Ben and his tracks playing it solo. He told me a story of like, yeah, I was on a plane, and I at some point had to put my Switch away because I was getting really frustrated with that pufferfish. So, hey, that boss is hard. Underwater bosses don't screw around. But I do agree with the general consensus that this was one of the most underappreciated games on the Wii U, and I'm just really happy that it moved to the Switch. It was one of the first ones to head to Switch, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah. It was totally the right call to get it on there ASAP.
Yeah, so, like, I haven't bought it on Switch yet. I want to, but I just, I got other games that I gotta buy right now, and I already own a Wii U copy of Tropical Freeze, so there's not a huge, rush.
What, you mean New Funky Mode wasn't call enough for you?
No.
It wasn't for me either, don't worry.
I mean, they sold me on the Wii U version with Cranky Kong. But no, I haven't bought it on Switch for the new funky mode yet. But yeah, that's what I'll never forget about Tropical Freeze.
Oh, absolutely. Same. I mean, playing it in co-op with my friend Scott. Great memories there. Pushing through it in 2 to 3 sessions. It's so difficult. Oh man, it just... Especially when you're getting tired and you're pushing through the end, and it's even those last couple bosses. I mean, because Bashmaster's the second to last boss, and Volcano Dome, I think is the name of the final. That's another really good boss track. But it's they're difficult bosses, and it's a good thing you're hearing the amazing pieces so often. But yeah, wow, the soundtrack, wow. I keep. We talk about sneaky GOAT level, greatest of all time Nintendo soundtracks, because you remember it's oh, Tropical Freeze, yeah, that's a really good soundtrack, but then you actually listen to it and it's really underrated for just how amazing it is.
Yeah, it should be talked about more than it is, honestly.
Yeah, so again, I'm really glad like you that we got to it, especially alongside Pokemon trading card game, which nobody talks about as an amazing soundtrack.
What a weird combination.
Right? But it works for episode 99 of Original Soundchat. So that'll do it for us this week. Thank you so much for listening. You can follow me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at The Dobaga. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast version that you want. Hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. You can get the Original Soundchat podcast feed as well as the Smasterpieces podcast feed, because that's Joe's other show that he hosts Those are on podcast services all around the globe. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, even on Spotify. You can get the podcast feed there, but also we have a Spotify playlist where if we talk about a video game music track on the show and it's on Spotify, it's going on that big playlist. But Joe, I don't think we're adding anything this week.
No, these are both Nintendo published games, so no.
It's just how it is until they loosen up and embrace the streaming future. Working on bonus tracks. Happy to announce that it's not necessarily a bonus track. It'll be our end of the year episode, but best of 2020. Bring up that white smoke because the list is complete. We have made our selections. Our long, difficult task is over. We'll still have to record the episode, of course, but
that's the easy part.
yeah, but the top 10 has been created. We've discovered and selected 19 honorable mentions, and then still another 20 games to quickly mention on top of that. It's an incredible list this year.
Yeah, it's nuts. This was a bonkers year for video game music, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear that.
Mm-hmm. But until then, you can listen to all that we offer, follow us, and comment on social media at Soundchat OST. Leave feedback for us and suggestions for games to cover in the future. Next week, it's episode 100.
Oh, man.
Joe, who are we talking about?
I will be talking about Utada Hikaru.
Oh, you were so close, I feel like, to a Smash Brothers prediction shot call for the ages. Wow. I will be talking about Gerard Marino. Oh, yes, it'll be a great callback there to our humble beginnings. All right, Joe, let's play us out.
Well, I wanted to find a cover of Punch Bowl, but again, like we said, Big Top Bop appears to be the favorite of the internet, which, I mean, there are worse problems to have. I was able to find a cover of Big Top Bop by Game Metal, who we have used in the past for our transitions and enders, and it's really, really good, so enjoy that.
That's a quality cover for sure. Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Sound Chat. We'll see you next time. Take care.